April 1947, in the heart of the Ozark Mountains of Arkansas, a child was brought into this world, simply known as Kitty. Now, Kitty's horror began as far back as she can remember. The sexual abuse she endured throughout her childhood would have killed most children. Oh, but Kitty was not like most children. No, this is the gut-wrenching story about how Kitty, Cae Cordell, overcame the abuse, escaped the horror, lived a life of fighting victimization, and became the godly woman she is today.
Listener discretion is advised.
Hey guys, welcome back to the SWADE Pro Show. I'm Stacy. Today I have Cae Cordell with me. Cae, now what's interesting about this, I think y'all are going to love this story because it's true, is Cae is, her story similar to the Ronald Gene Simmons, but she's a survivor of that, which is great. And she's gone on to do a lot of great things like get a degree. Yes. And so I'm going to let her tell y'all about that. She's written 3 books. Is that right?
17.
Oh, goodness. 17, but I know of these 3 because you told me about the 3.
Yes.
And purposely, I didn't ask her about her story or listen to other podcasts because I want to hear it for the first time from you, just like the audience is going to do that too.
Okay.
So sorry, I said Miss Cae, that's Southern coming out. Cae Cordell, tell us about, just talk to us.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here, Stacy, and to work with you. I grew up in Northwest Arkansas, Madison County, specifically Kingston. I graduated from Kingston High School, and I grew up in a very poor, hideous situation, raised by a couple of parents who they loved their children, but they loved them too much. I can't ever remember not being sexually abused. And my dad, I believe, murdered 7 or 8 people, and the possibility they're still buried on his farm. And I've never been able to get anybody to go and actually look for the bodies. And I know that there's FBI records. I've been denied those records. And in the file, I believe it would tell what he was. And I never remember every day not getting a beating. And it was just a way of life back then, but I realized, the older I got, that I wanted to be different. And so that's why when you mentioned, I graduated from Arkansas Tech, and then I graduated Boise State University. I've got a few degrees, and I've been blessed with imagination and ability to put words to a page. So I've got 17 books out, but specifically we're talking about this book right now, Stacy, Redbird Phoenix. It's the story of my childhood up to 18 when I finally got away and left Madison County.
So where can they see that book and buy it?
Amazon.com.
Okay.
And also on my website, you can see a lot of things about me and what I do at Cae Cordell, Cae Cordell, CaeCordell.com. And you can follow me on Facebook.
Good.
And I work with domestic violence victims now. I do counseling. Been doing that for 34 years. And, but you got any questions? I mean.
Well, so far, so you said you had a degree. What was your degree from Arkansas Tech? And then what was the one from Boise?
They're all combined. I have a theater, drama, communications, and a speech degree, intertwined from both colleges. And then I have a business education vocational degree, and I was certified to teach, and I also have a science endorsement. So I taught theater, speech, accounting, all kinds of business classes in high school. And I proceeded then as I got older and, with more education, I taught for college in an Oregon State prison system. Wow. And that was very interesting.
I bet so.
Yes.
I bet so. So let's take it one story at a time, if you will. Tell us about that book. Go. Don't tell us about the book. Relive it for us if you don't mind.
The earliest I can remember is possibly being 2 or 3 years old and my mother molesting me. And it was horrific. was something that she often did daily. And then I had a baby sister, and I couldn't protect her. And I tried. It's very difficult. We didn't have any food, and my dad would be gone often. And mother, I think today she would have had an IQ under 70, around 70, 75 would have been her IQ. She'd grew up being raped by an uncle. And after I've gotten older, I've looked back, Stacy, and found out there's incest on both sides of the paternal and maternal sides of my family, 6 generations.
Goodness.
I've had cousins now because I wrote this book. They've come forward and told me about their abuse. And I've got others in my family. My brother was older than me. He grew up then, started abusing me. And then I had 3 uncles that sexually abused me. To have a lighter mood, I always say I was their girl toy. And
That's
unfortunately, it happens every 68 seconds. Some child is being raped as we're talking.
That's horrible.
And Arkansas, I think they're ranked, they were number 2, and I think they dropped down to number 10
Wow.
in instances of incest and rape.
Wow.
And right now we're working, we have to stop what happened to me. We need a constitutional amendment for victims' rights. And my point in telling my story is to let you know, as an audience, that if you've been raped or abused, such as I was, it's not your fault.
Right.
But I grew up thinking it was me. Something was wrong with me. I learned to cook, had a baby sister come along at 4.5. My mother didn't want her, so I raised her till I left home at 18, and she was 14. And the hardest thing I ever did was to walk away from my baby brother and sister. My baby brother was 6 and she was 14. And when she got 18, graduated high school, I was able to go back and get her. Never was able to help my baby brother. And my oldest brother died in 2018. Died a very angry, bitter man. My dad died in 2014. Had a $750 bounty on my head when he died.
That's crazy.
Because I'd written the book. I had exposed his sins, he and my mother's sins. And they were big. They go to church, could shout, were the biggest of them. But they, before we get home, our time we get home, they'd beat us. And God wasn't in their lives.
No.
Hey, you. If you're enjoying this, why not give us a like and consider following us wherever you get your podcast? Sharing is caring, and we would love your feedback, so drop us a line. Now, back to the SWADE Pro Show.
But one thing I did find, as I got older, I recognized how much God was with me. And at age 11, I accepted Jesus into my heart. And when I did, he gave me something that caused me to fight back. And I fought him from the age 12 till I left home. My dad sold me at age 12 to a man for a farm and was going to make me go with him. He'd told him I was 18, and I thought, what? And I refused to go. So I eat my food out of a floor from the time I got 18. But I got smart. I learned to grab it out of the skillet while I was cooking it.
Oh.
And he wouldn't pay for my lunch at school. So the cooks, I got to work at school. The little school there at Kingston let me work for my books and my lunch. And they fed me 3 meals a day before I went home. And so I was really blessed to have those 2 ladies, and I had 2 teachers. Well, I had 2 lady teachers and 2 male teachers that really tried to show me I could get away, that I could dream big, that I didn't have to stay there, that I didn't belong. And you know what the funniest thing was? I always thought they'd stole me from somewhere. I just knew. Someday my real parents would come back and get me. They never did show up.
That is something else that strikes deep in me. Is you were talking about you were blessed to be able to work for your food and books.
Yes.
That is crazy because that mentality is so good. It's so positive.
I had nothing else to live for.
Wow.
I knew if I could get educated. They were so ignorant. We lived in such filth. I lived in cast-off clothes. I wore a baling twine to hold my breeches up, my brother's pants. I had to wear them. When he got tired of them, I got them. And his old shirts. So I got a baling twine, red baling twine, tied my pants up around my waist and went to school.
Wow.
And I went barefooted because he refused to. My dad wouldn't buy me clothes. And I had an aunt. Her name was Daisy Russell Swearinger, and she bought clothes and shoes. And out of that, I'd have something that I could wear. Right. And I went on to school against his wishes. And I finished high school.
Awesome.
And I made up my mind I was not going to let anything stop me. And I had a teacher, Hazel McCullough. She would help me. She'd bring salve to school and help me put it on my sores because she'd see where I was beaten. The sheriff wouldn't intervene. He didn't care. And there was no law back then to protect children here in Arkansas at all. And I had another teacher, Catherine Combs, that she tried to adopt me, and my dad said she could for $500. He had a lot of value on me.
Right, because he didn't want to get it out.
No. And it shocked her so bad, she just walked away from it. But those two teachers wrote me till they died. They were my mentors, and they
That's
taught
good.
me, well, Mrs. McCullough taught me how to bathe at school. And I worked and helped the school. We got a washer and dryer. And so she let me wash my clothes at school. And so I had clean clothes to wear.
That's awesome.
But there's good people out there in our school system, even today, that if children know, they could go talk to their school counselor, their teacher. Let somebody know that you're being touched wrong. Right. Fight back. Get a mouth on you. I appreciate kids with mouths. I've been a foster parent. I know what goes on with so many foster children. I won't discuss that, but it's similar to what I've lived.
That's sad.
And it's here in Arkansas. And we need people in our legislature step forward and offer to help. I'll be happy to speak in front of any legislative body here in Arkansas and tell my story and share it. Because my story, as I say, is every kid's story that's being abused.
Right.
I'm just one that got away.
Yeah, that's powerful for you to say it's not your fault.
It is not a child's fault at all.
It's not at all.
No. And I used to ask my dad where I came from. This is not very nice, but I said, Daddy, where did I come from? He looked at me and said, you're nothing. He said, I was down in the field and there was a big stump there and I saw a crow go over there and shit. And went and looked and it was you. He said, you were so ugly, but I felt bad and I decided to take you to the house and I washed you, clean you up and decided to keep you.
And he wasn't joking at all. He was serious.
I was not joking. No.
Goodness gracious.
And they would leave me locked under the stairs all day in the dark. So I was claustrophobic for years. Still have to fight it some days.
Right.
And I never knew anything different.
That's crazy.
Well, kids are living this every day.
Really?
Here in Arkansas,
Goodness.
in this country. My story's common. It's just, I'm more vocal about it. I decided the only way I could change my world is to tell my story.
Right.
And take responsibility enough to care to let other people know what's happening.
And that there is a light at the end of the tunnel.
Oh, yes. The more education I got, the freer I got.
I think that's why he didn't want you going to school.
Well, he was paranoid. He claimed to have worked for the FBI. And I know there's an FBI file on him. I've not been able to get it. But he did awful things.
What about your mom? Tell me a little bit about your mother.
She was born in New York, and we found out recently that she'd always told her mother died when her sister was a year and a half, which made her about 3.5. And that's what I thought, her mother died. We found out recently that she didn't die. My grandmother didn't die till 1941, and she was an institution in New Jersey, as far as we can find out. And my mother was found, I took her to a doctor in Fort Smith, and he had 3 psychiatrists to evaluate her, and he found out that she was a sociopath. And my dad was a sociopath, paranoid schizophrenic. And so their world was upside down.
Not ours.
No. It was not normal. Whatever they saw, it was not normal. They went to church as a facade.
Right.
It was all it was. They didn't serve God. If they had it, they'd have loved us children. We were forced, there was a bush up Madison County called the Leatherwood. And it was like leather, real branchy, and he'd make us go cut. We had to cut at least one 6 foot long for each. And he'd make my brother and I stand and beat each other. And my mother's favorite thing was to make us strip naked and beat us.
Really?
Yes.
Your
she was
mom?
She was a sadist.
Oh.
And that's what got her turned on. Then they go to the barn, make us kids go to the barn. We knew this.
Yeah.
They was having their thing.
Right.
And that went on day after day.
Goodness.
And the ugly of incest it's indescribable. There's no way to tell you as the public unless you've experienced just how ugly it is. And they want it to be normal. And it goes on. It's unfortunately went on in my brother's family. And I try to refrain publicly from saying much about that, but it carried on.
Right. That's sad.
And later we'll talk about I married what I knew.
Right.
But right now,
right.
It's teachers every day go to school. And as I was teaching, I could tell the kids that were being abused or starved or mistreated. The emotional, you're facing emotional, spiritual, and physical abuse when you're being sexually abused. Your mind is twisted. Your spirituality, most kids become angry and blame God. But if I hadn't had God, I wouldn't have survived.
Right.
And God's grace, I won a Bible in the 4th grade. And I started reading that. And through that, they didn't want me reading the Bible. But they'd go to church and get up and quote it. But they didn't want us kids to know what it said.
Right.
And I thought, you know what? I'm going to read it. And I started reading it, and the Lord started speaking to me through the scriptures. And I found out I had value. I was not this nothing.
Yeah.
I wasn't worthless.
Right.
I wasn't ugly. Do you know it's just recently I could look at my pictures and realize I was pretty?
That's awesome.
I never knew I was pretty.
That's awesome.
It's really weird. You look at yourself and you think, whoa, that's my high school graduation picture. I was beautiful and didn't know it.
Right.
And I presumed myself ugly for so many years.
They didn't want you to think that because they didn't want you to do better.
No.
They wanted to, keep you, I hate to say brainwashed, but I mean.
Well, that's all it was brainwashing.
Right.
Conditioning and control. Sex abuse is about control, power, and manipulation. And that's what they were. My dad was totally into power trip. He had us kids. He told us he owned us. He and Mother had a fight evidently, and she'd left, and he had paid her $350. I found the check. They kept it in an old tin lard bucket. It was a big old lard bucket they had full of their pictures and papers, and the check said $350 for 2 children that he'd paid her. He said he always told me, I own you. You can't do anything about it. You're mine, and you're never leaving.
So how was it leaving when you turned 18?
It was scary. But leading up to that,
right.
When I was 16, whether I was pregnant by he or my brother, I don't know. But he beat a baby out of me. And I was in school, and I like to died. But I was more determined. I'd sit every time he beat me. I'd sit, read my Bible aloud. And read it. And him just beating me. And I'd sit there and read. He'd say, you're going to deny God. I said, no, you have to kill me. And so one day he was beating me with a handsaw on my bed. And he was so angry, he turned it up, started hitting me with the teeth. And I knew he was going to kill me. He had that look in his eye. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me and said, you know Jesus, do something about it. And it's the first time I really feel like that I heard the voice of God in me. And I thought a minute, and I thought, well, Lord, Jesus? And I looked at him and I said, in Jesus' name, you can't hit me anymore. And he kept trying and trying and trying till he just went, why is a sheet, and threw the saw and run. And I knew then that Jesus was in me, had something that was powerful.
Wow.
And God called me in the ministries after I was 16. And from age 12 to 18, I told my dad every day, I'm leaving as when I get 18. I'm not going to stay. Didn't matter what he did. I'd say, I'm going to leave when I graduate high school. And he said, no, you're not. Burl Weathers was a store owner there. And I had $20 saved. And he charged me $20 to come and get me. And he told my dad, you're going to let her go. And it's the hardest thing I ever did that day, walking away from my little brother and sister.
Right.
And leaving. And
I couldn't imagine.
It was horrifying. But Burl took me to Fayetteville. I won a little scholarship to Drawn's Business School. And a couple, Harold and Hazel Goodfellow, took me in their home and let me work for my room and board. And I went to business school. And I learned how to work in an office. And I had a way to get away.
That's awesome.
I knew I could get a job with that little college, that little school's training. And from then on, I never had to worry about having a job because I was really good at typing and learned shorthand and all the business, machines.
Good.
And I was thrilled. I thought I was the richest woman in the world.
That is just I love this story. I'm glad that I'm experiencing it for the first time. I like that. Because I know you wanted me to kind of learn, but I was like, I want to experience it. This is awesome. I mean, it's not, but it is.
Well, it's so many victims remain victims. I become a survivor.
Right.
And that's the difference. And that's what I want to encourage anyone listening to this. You don't have to be beat down. You don't have to get into drugs, being sexually
Promiscuous.
Promiscuous is the word, yes. We don't have to do that.
Right.
We can actually choose to be normal, decent human beings.
Right.
And I made up my mind I was not going to be like them.
Right.
And I'm not. Never
I'm
have
glad.
been. Never have been. When I got older, they were mad because I kept a nice house. I could cook. I learned to sew in home ec at Kingston. Mrs. McCullough taught me how to sew. So I learned how to make my own clothes. And there's no holding you back if you learn.
Right.
And that's what I encourage who's listening. Get an education. Get a vocational education that you can work and make a living at. Cut hair, be a beautician or barber. Be a janitor.
Right.
Janitorial services makes good money. Be a plumber. Plumber makes some of the best money there is.
Them and electricians, right.
Yes. Get a blue-collar job.
Yeah.
And you don't have to live. And learn to be kind. Love your children.
Right.
And be kind to yourself. Most of all, forgive yourself. That's the hardest thing, was I blame myself. I thought there was something wrong with me, the way they treated me. I wondered for years, what, am I nothing? At 6 years old, I thought, what am I doing wrong? I'm doing everything they tell me. And it's so hard to figure it out. And I used to just beg them to say, I love you. I said, all I want is just you tell me I love you.
And you're proud of me.
Yeah, never once. And when I graduated high school, it meant nothing to them. But I got my diploma.
Good.
And I knew that night I was free. The day I turned 18 was in April, and I graduated then the end of April, there, 1st of May, in 1965. I didn't go home. I went home with my classmates. I stayed gone a full week. And they beat me half to death when I got home, but I declared my freedom that day I turned 18.
I couldn't imagine, because you knew in the back of your mind what was when you went home.
I knew what.
God,
The principal threatened me, told me I had to go home, and I said, I'm 18. You can't make me go home anymore. And I had 2 or 3 girls in the class. Their parents let me come and stay all night with them. And I spent the whole week free. I thought it was wonderful.
That's awesome.
It was great.
Something, that kind of simple, if you will, was great.
Well, you have to have a goal. And I encourage you, joining the service, the Navy, Marines, Army. And when I was a teacher, I'd have those, different branches of the service come in. But if I'd only knew what I know now, my dad was such a coward, he'd claim he was a conscientious objector. And he'd, no, you weren't to go into the Army. That was bad. Mm-hmm. If I'd had sense now, as I do, I would have joined the Army or some part of the service and got away that way.
Right.
And that's what I encourage students now when I was teaching, to do that.
Right. Because what's the worst thing to happen? You get educated in the service.
You learn, you have mentors.
Right.
You learn how. I needed to know what normal was.
Right.
I never learned what normal is to 34 years ago. And so I've worked towards normal the last 34 years.
Now, see, that's what I was saying about staying at the friends' houses. We kind of take that as, well, that's taken for granted, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. And you were happy to do that. And it sounds like the stuff that we take for granted, the normal stuff, you're happy to be able to do. And that's awesome.
It is.
I wish I could have your mentality.
Well, it just comes from being stubborn. And I, as I said, I had to do everything we had cows. It was not, time I was 4.5, was raising my baby sister, and then we moved and got dairy cattle, 35. I had to milk them by hand. Time I was 6 years old, I was milking all those cows by myself, and twice a day, and getting on the bus and going to school.
Yeah.
Didn't have time to change my clothes. I'm sure, off to smelling just like the farm.
Yeah.
And but I went to school, and I don't regret a bit of it.
What was school like?
It was hard because my dad was hated, and during World War II, he had wouldn't register for the draft and was arrested by the FBI. And I have all that paperwork where he was arrested, newspaper articles, and that's when I suspect they turned him to work for them. That's what it. I found some snippets out about his life, and he was just mean. My grandpa and Grandma Russell, they lived by us until I was in 4th grade, and he beat them almost to death, and Grandpa forced him to buy his share of the farm out, and I lost my help. Grandpa and Grandma were good to me and helped me milk the cows, and Grandma said I'd have never lived. She and Carrie Bollinger, a neighbor, they took turns coming after I was born at home to take care of me every day to see that I was fed.
Wow.
And I milked a cow and fed my baby sister in a bottle, kept her alive. And at 12, then my baby brother was born, so I had another baby to take care of. I don't ever remember not being a mother.
Right.
And that's tough now with children. We, in so many tough situations, children are left at home with their little brothers and sisters taking care of them. Mom, dad's on drugs. They're not fed. They get bitter. My 2 brothers were so bitter, still bitter. I have a youngest brother. He's still awfully bitter. And my sister's had a really rough time of it. She's still working full time. She's 4.5 years younger than me. But we've done the best we could with what we had.
Right.
Each one of us had to choose.
Right.
Her path's been different than mine. And I turned to writing. Words. I had these words, all those years of having to be silent. I had these words just boiling up into me. When I started writing, it just came pouring out. All the things that I wished I could have said, I put into poetry. I've got a romance novel out and a murder mystery.
Awesome.
It's so much fun to write murder mysteries. I can kill off the people who used to hurt me.
Right. Exactly.
Put them in words and do them in.
Right.
And it's so much fun. And poetry, I've always heard words. I've got a lot of my poetry could be turned into songs. I've had one song called Cry for Us, and it's about child abuse. Sweet Jesus, cry for us. And I've got it set to print music, and I've had it sang and recorded.
Awesome.
And
so can they hear that on your website by chance?
I haven't put it up.
Oh, goodness. You need to put that up.
Well, I hadn't thought about it.
There
That
you
would
go.
be interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. And this book, Redbird Phoenix, I have a movie script written on it. And we're working on getting the movie script sold and getting it made for the big screen.
I think it should. I definitely think it should.
Well, it's a book that it'll shock you how I wrote the script. I did a really good job on it. I'm proud of it.
I bet
Yes.
if you've written 17 books, I bet you know a thing or two on writing.
I've got 6 more in working on them.
Awesome.
And so it's really interesting. I've got another murder mystery, and then I've got the second counseling book outlined, and I'm going to work on it. But out of child abuse, this is something that people need to recognize. There's going to be a lot of physical reaction. Women often, they either get overactive sexually, get into drugs, alcohol, or self-abuse. When I was teaching in the state of Washington, I worked on a RAIN, R-A-I-N, period after each letter, hotline. And I worked with girls who were being sexually abused, and they cut themselves. And that's something, as a teacher or as a pastor, Sunday school teacher, you need to watch. If you see a child cutting themselves, more than likely that child's being sexually abused.
Really?
Yes. Those are things that I heard stories that mine was a picnic of children at home. And I work with domestic violence victims or or a mother who's had a child raped, and I work with them. I pick my clients to do counseling with, and I've heard so many stories that breaks your heart.
That's sad.
My story breaks people's heart, but to me, my story is about being an overcomer and a victor.
Exactly.
And that I got away.
Right. And you can too. You know?
Yes, you can. I say there's a catch and release. Now, you could get caught up in child abuse, but you're the only one that can unhook yourself and get away.
Right.
And that's what you have to decide is, I'm not going to hang on to that fishing pole.
Right.
And be cast about. I'm going to have my own life.
And that's a lot easier said than done too.
It's hard.
Because, I mean, it would be easy to lean into it and have a crutch.
And whine.
Right.
I won't feel sorry for myself.
Right.
I didn't deserve what happened. I wasn't a part of it. And I got, with the Lord's help, I didn't do none of this without God's help, Stacy.
Right.
None. God led me and directed my path in path of righteousness. I say he led me into where the still waters are. And that's where I've learned to live. I went into the ministry. I preached. This June will be 63 years in the ministry.
Good.
And
Good.
I've tried to do as good as I could. I've pastored some churches. And I love the Lord. And I want to really emphasize this. God has absolutely no part in you being abused. It's not his fault. It's not your fault. It's people who abuse you. They are taking advantage, and they're the aggressor. They're the perpetrator, and they choose. It's their choice to rape and abuse you. It's not. God has nothing in it.
Right. It's free will.
Romans 1:18-32 talks about, it says, if a man willfully knows these sins are wrong and he willfully does them, it's to him eternal damnation. I teach very vocally that only about 2% of sex offenders ever quit. And that sexually offending a child, the Bible in Matthew, I think it's Matthew 5, it says, it's better if a man had a millstone tied around his neck and cast into the sea than to harm one of these little ones. In our body, the Bible teaches, our body is the temple of the Holy Spirit. Blasphemy is violating that temple of the Holy Spirit. When you rape a child, you have blasphemed the holy nature of God. And that's what my parents were doing. They were blaspheming God every time they touched one of us children.
Right.
They go to church, went to a Pentecostal church, Assembly of God. They would go and stand up, testify about how the devil had been attacking them all week, and it was them. They testified against each other.
Right.
And it was just hysterical because the whole community laughed. But you don't. If you're laughed at school, made fun of because you're poor, don't be ashamed. You hold your head up and you go to school anyway.
Right.
I went barefooted till graduated high school many days. Even in the winter, I went barefooted. When I left home, my hands were solid black in the palms and my feet because I was determined. I made up my mind at 12 years old when my dad sold me, never again. And I just fought. I had a mindset every day. I'd go to school. What can I learn? What can I do? And made sure my little baby brother and sister got fed.
Wow. That's awesome. It's not, but it is. I keep saying that.
Just be thankful that there is survivorship that can wait for the victim.
Right.
And
but they got to put the pole down, like you said.
Yes, they got to lay it down and quit whining. I've never found a place to feel sorry for myself.
Right.
I don't feel sorry for myself. I refuse, because that means I'm saying it was okay. And I refuse to say it was okay.
Right.
Even to this day, they were wrong. My parents were wrong to have hurt us children.
Right.
And I found out that my aunt, my mother's sister, was she was a sex offender. Her children. First time I've said this aloud.
Goodness.
And it's sad. It's in families. Incest is generational. It's choices. And it's passed one generation to the other one. And I determined in my family.
It was going to stop with you.
Yes. It didn't, but we'll talk about that here shortly.
Well, yeah, I mean, you wasn't going to be the one to.
No, I wasn't going to let it happen anymore to me. And I stopped it.
Right.
And I had 3 uncles. One was a great uncle. And I named them in the book. There is no excuse. If you cover up for a father-in-law, a husband who's raping your children, or your dad, or an uncle, or your brother, don't participate in their sin. Look them straight in the face that you had no right to rape me.
Right.
You had no right to use me. And look them straight in the face and say, you did it, you're guilty, and I'm holding you accountable because I'm going to tell people what you are.
Right.
But there's also dangerous situations. I have to, I must say this. There are dangerous situations where you've got to be careful not to be killed by, speaking out. And you've got to, that's why I encourage you to go to your teachers and counselors. Stop a cop. We have SRO officers now in school.
Right.
And let somebody know. It is frightening. And we've got so many children in the foster system that every child I had in the foster system had been abused. And it's terrifying what's out there.
It just makes you wonder, like, what do you, well, I guess they're not thinking when they have kids, Because I was so excited to have my 2 kids. We tried for 3 years to have Noah. And it's like, I didn't have a kid just so I could have a slave, do housework and
well, that's
all
what
that.
my parents had. My dad had children to work us.
You know what I mean? I wanted a kid because I wanted to do things with the kid. I didn't want the kid to do things with me.
You wanted somebody to love.
Right. I wanted, and there were times I chose B over that. That's, I'm not making excuses, being selfish with my time, but I always try to make up for it, So.
Well, we want each generation to be better than what we were.
Right. And I've read it to where your parents normally are the only people who want you to do better than them.
Yes.
So.
I had 3 children. I insisted they all finish college.
Right. Good.
And they did.
Good.
Thanks for listening to the SWADE Pro Show. See you guys on the next episode.